Okay, it's already Tuesday. Been really tied up with garden project, which is a big project for me this year. But this is going to be a short, notification from this year, and it's brought to you by Venus and the Moon. Venus, because we are in the season of Taurus, and Venus is the ruler of Taurus. So what transpires this week, let's get our chart up here. What transpires this week is that Venus, as you can kind of see right here, is right there at the end of Pisces. And this is Tuesday, today. Tomorrow, if we just flip this ahead, you can kind of see that 4 minutes excuse me, away from Aries. So that on Wednesday, our mercurial day, Venus is going to shift into Aries, conjoining with Mercury already in Aries, but more specifically, conjoining with that Neptune consideration. So in my dreamscape of last night, this question arose, really tuning into essential Taurian considerations. And a question popped up. Am I actually accomplishing an experience of the living process that is actually adding value to being alive here on planet Earth? Is the environment actually joyfully providing accolades to what it is that I am accomplishing in relationship with this living environment that I find myself? And I think we can each ask that question as we're here in the season of Taurus, and the connection, potential that each of us is being asked all the time. Is this living environment that we find ourselves in actually inspired by what it is that we are providing and living with every moment that we have in relation to this larger field of nature that we find ourselves? That is the main focus right now. Remember, Venus, the ruler of Taurus, which is the season that we're in right now. To add a little extra flavor into this experience, Venus, having just completed its dance cycle, second one, because it went retrograde back into Pisces, in the realm where it's, quite happy. But you have to ask yourself, how are my experiences of relationship, that's a Venus term, going? Do I find value in them? Well, in Pisces, which is where Venus still is today, but only for a little while longer, the potential of, first of all, having what should we call it, a dreamy kind of an attitude toward, how it is that we perceive this process of relationship unfolding in our lives. In Pisces, the potential is there for some very deep and profound exchanges of experience between one another that really don't just hang around on the surfacey level of experiences. No, because Pisces is the deepest, most penetrating and profound zone of the zodiac. And when we get into relationships, playing that Venus card, the potential for, being something a lot more than we actually had considered is on the table. Now, on Wednesday, as this Venus moves into Pisces, and once again is holding hands, quite specifically with Neptune, a planet that has substantial affinity to, yes, you guessed it, the sign of Pisces. We can go with two factors in play here. First of all, it's Aries, and there's always an impulsive nature when Aries is, one of the energies that's being, toyed with. Venus, we land in Aries, and so there's a kind of a drive to, or maybe an inspiration to strike out. What other kind of relationships, or just what kind of relationships are available to be discovered? At the same time, we bump into Neptune, and we'll be with Neptune for a couple of days. And be very conscious as we go through this week, because on this day, actually, we started out the week, I'll get back to this. We started out the week on the 29th with the moon going out of bounds. Go over here and look at it's out of bounds here on Wednesday. See that, 28 degrees. That's out of bounds. So if we throw that, that unpredictable, wild kind of feeling nature that the moon represents as it's dancing through the sign of Gemini now, the curiosity factor is in play. And if we throw that together with, what kind of people are intriguing you right now that you may consider toying with the idea of relationship, and at the same time, because of the Neptunian energy that is there, be very wary that the potential, if you will, of tuning in with rose-colored glasses as to, a dynamism that you might be painting this experience of how the interaction is going between you and somebody else, anybody else, that may or may not be actually as real as you think it is. This is in play, and at the same time, you got this bouncy Aries, kind of exciting energy that wants to, what does its ruler say? Mars in Leo. Yeah, wants to take chances. Gemini is curious about those chances. That's that moon out of bounds. You can kind of feel a potential energy here that you might just forget, just for a moment, that we're in the season of Taurus now. And I would go back to that initial question that I brought up. Are we accomplishing something in tune with this natural environment that we find ourselves in that will enhance and bring an increased value, if you will, in what it is that our interaction with this larger environmental world that we find ourselves. That's the ponderable for this week. Like I said, this was just going to be a short consideration. And so I'm going to, when the weather clears up, yeah, it's still springtime here in the Northwest. Back to the garden. So I chose one of my word plaques behind me to awaken. It's springtime, Taurus. Things are budding out. You can kind of feel the essence of, if we were to envision the sprouting of plants up through the soil, the opening of flowers to catch the sunshine. This is an invitation to each of us to really, really, really pay attention to how is your interaction experience going with the everyday life experience. Is life happy to have you on board? Is what you are providing going to make the living experience that much better? That's all I got for this week. See y'all next week.